Come on, YouTube, you can do it. There we go. Come on, YouTube, you can. There's that delay. Okay. And I'm going to hit present here. All right, panelists, can you see my slides? Beautiful. Okay, everyone. I'm just getting started here. I'm going to give people about 20 more seconds to flood in. This is the slide for the link to our resource document, which is exactly what you're going to see today, our slides. So if you want to take a picture of this slide, go for it. If you want to write that bit.ly link on a post-it or a note, now's your chance. We will have it again up in a little bit and towards the end of our share time here. So I'll give you 5 more seconds and then I'll start introducing this roundtable so we can get going. All right. Okay, everyone. Well, welcome to our EPEW 2020 share time. My name is Stephanie Sandino. I am one of the committee members for EPEW, and I am so happy to introduce this secondary panel of amazing educators. And let me go to the next slide here. And I'll let each one introduce themselves. We'll start with Becky since she's my first bubble there, and then we'll go from right and down to Kristen, okay?
Yeah, Becky Fulmer here, formerly an instructional coach, math teacher, computers teacher, and even though I have my degrees in PE, I actually never taught PE, so I was pretty excited when I got into the instructional coaching realm and had the opportunity to support health and physical educators. So this has been a very awesome last few years that I've gotten to work in this area, and Mark and I have the website CBHPE, so that's been consuming a lot of our time.
Absolutely. Mark Fulmer, past president of IAFERD, Illinois, and as well as IAFERD and Midwest District Middle School Teacher of the Year.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Brellier. I am from Guilderland High School, which is in upstate New York. I teach dance, high school physical education, and I also teach unified PE, and I also am the faculty assistant to the athletic director. Happy to be here, and thanks all for joining.
And Kristen?
Me. Hi, Kristen Okra here in Aliso Viejo, California. I teach at Don Juan Avila Middle School, and I've been teaching middle school now for this is 25 years. Oh my gosh. Just haven't been physically back to EPEW in a little while, so this is great to come back in a sense, and you guys are just doing a phenomenal job.
Hello. I am Erica Munt. I'm from Iowa City, Iowa, and I teach high school PE with a majority focus in strength and conditioning. And I was 2008 Shape Teacher of the Year.
All right. And there's that link again. I'd like to thank every single one of you for helping us be better together. I say as we take our workshop into the virtual setting, and we are, as Scott would say, in our last inning. We're on our last day of our virtual workshop. Right after this, we've got our social and we are done. We can't believe it. This is a little bit of a shorter format than we're used to, but it's been amazing, and we're so happy for you to all join us and share your experiences with us. I'll pull that link up at the end. A couple of webinar norms here, or housekeeping. We are using Zoom webinar, so that you're going to see 2 features. You're going to see the chat feature, which is our back channel, so you can introduce yourself, as I'm sure you're already doing right now. You can network with one another and keep the conversations flowing right then and there. We also have the Q&A feature. So that is where you can ask any of our panelists any questions. They'll be happy to answer you. And they'll keep tabs on that as we move through the presentation. So again, if we want to spotlight a question that we think is relevant for everyone to hear, we will do so towards the end of the share time. Our focus questions for today are really current and relevant to each and every one of us out in the phys ed and health ed field. Our panelists are going to be talking about their experiences as they were in remote learning in the spring with their students, as well as sharing some experiences that they're already thinking about going into the new school year. They're going to talk to you about some in-person ideas for phys ed learning, as well as some hybrid ideas. These are the three scenarios that most of us are finding ourselves in. So they're just here to share their knowledge and what they know has worked for them through their experiences with their own kids in their own areas in their own part of the state. So those are our three focus questions. And right now I'm going to hand the mic, as you can say, over to the Fulmers that are going to focus a little bit on the technology aspect of this.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. The first thing that I'd like to point out here is this is really a place for teachers to go to for some resources to give them some ideas. The first thing you'll notice on this slide is we've tried to break it down into three categories. We have remote, social distancing in PE, as well as PE in the classroom. And one thing you're going to notice in all three of those categories is hybrid, because at some point in time, we feel that hybrid learning will take place using all of these methods and complementing all of these methods throughout the school year. We've shared out some tools, and again, within those each one of those arenas, you'll find some ideas to spur your thinking. And under the social distancing in PE section, just to highlight very quickly, there's a vast number of resources under the file, projectors file, as well as the templates file. And I very quickly want to make mention of flipped learning. I think this is one of the underused pieces that we can take advantage of as teachers. Personally, this was a great resource for me because it guided my teaching. If you're not familiar with flipped learning, it was an opportunity for me to share out to the students ahead of time what they were going to learn or do the next day. And I could get some information or feedback from them, which would then guide my teaching once the lesson actually took place that next day. And it allows for, obviously, getting quicker into whatever the activity might be. If we can move forward to the next slide, please.
One other thing too with the flipped learning before we go there, Stephanie, I think it's going to be interesting because I think we're going to have an opportunity to almost reverse the flipped learning situation in this environment. If we can't use equipment, for example, or if we're in the classroom, which we chose to have a column there for PE in the classroom because we're finding a lot of our teachers in the Illinois area, at least, are being told they're going to have to go into the classroom to provide physical education. So that was kind of a focus for us. But what we think might end up happening is we may have to do some things where we show kids how to do various activities, but because we can't use equipment or because we're in limited space or because of the social distancing, we can't actually do it at that time. We can show them when they're in school and then have them go home and use a sock ball to do this or whatever it might happen to be. So almost reversing the flipped classroom style to where we're showing them how to do an activity so that when they go home, then they can attempt that activity or do that particular lesson. So I think this is something we haven't really all wrapped our minds around yet, but I think it's something we should consider.
Absolutely. So it's kind of like do the teaching now, the lecture portion, and then have the homework, so to speak, be the activity. So now if you can move on to the next slide, please. Awesome. Now here we just share out some ways that you can reach out to your students. For instance, if you're looking for video feedback from the kids, you can use Flipgrid. Or if you want to reach out and have some kind of interpersonal presentation with the students, you can use, obviously, like we're all using, Meet or Zoom. We all know the value of using Google Classroom with our students. And then if you want to create some kind of video, teacher created video, you could use something along the lines of Screencastify, Nimbus, or Zoom as well.
What we find is a lot of teachers are asking, you know, they haven't done a lot of these things yet. So we wanted to create a resource where when you want to do a specific thing, you can just come look at this slide and say, oh, this is the tool I use for it. Oh, this is the tool I use for it. And then that will guide you in terms of where to go and how to get started with it. And one other thing I want to mention is Mark and I are more than happy to help anyone, anytime. So if you have never used a tool and you don't know how to use it, you don't even know where to begin, and you'd like some help with it, please feel free to contact us. We'll Zoom or meet with you, and we'll be happy to show you, take you through, or send you, send you screenshots if that's helpful. So please, please, please reach out if you need help with anything. We're more than happy to help. All right, Stephanie, you can go on to the next slide. So on this slide, what we were trying to do, and I apologize for it if it looks a little bit crazy, but we were trying to help people know where they can go to find resources on the various topics. For those of you who aren't familiar with CBHPE, it's our website, and our goal has been to try to collect as many useful tools as possible for all of you out there. We feel very strongly that as this is all playing out, what's going to end up happening is many of you are going to end up moving from one situation to another. And in that case, we're going to have to really pivot quickly. And so my goal, our goal, as we've talked through this, is how can we help make these resources as quickly and readily available to you as possible? Because we know that you're going to need them, and you're going to need them fast. Many of you are going to think you're doing one thing, and then all of a sudden you're going to be doing something else. So Stephanie, if you'll go to the HPE at Home page.
Sure, let me just exit out of here.
So each one of those 4 locations are linked to, so you'll be able to go to each of those from the presentation. The HPE at Home page was created in March when everybody just had to get at this. And on this page, if you scroll down, you'll see tons and tons of resources. They are organized. You can keep on going down. They are organized by category, so it should be fairly easy to find what you're looking for. You can see at the top there, the secondary phys ed, cognitive activities. You can keep scrolling. Go through this quickly, Stephanie, because I know we don't have a lot of time. There's a dance section, keep going. There's a section on fitness, tons and tons of fitness things, obviously. We feel like if you take those fitness activities and add some reflection, you can really get the education back into it. There's a terrific health and wellness section that's just, the resources there are crazy great. And lots of lessons and multi-day lessons. And again, guys, these are shared by people from all over the world who have been so kind to share and make them available to you. When you click on any of these resources, all you have to do is go to File, make a copy. You'll have your own copy. You can edit it as you need to meet your student needs, which is the most critical or crucial, I don't know, the 2 words all together at one time, but the most important part. And then the printables at the bottom, which can be very important if you are doing PE outside. You can use a lot of these printables, and as well as for students who may not have access to the internet or devices. So that's a really important section as well. Now, if we can go on over to let's see, I forget which one, that one. Yeah, the back to school page. I want to just explain a little bit about what's on the back to school page. At the top of the page, you'll find all of Jamie Sparks has been amazing and putting together this resource with the map at the top that is all of the states' back to school plans as they become available. So if you don't have access to a state plan and you need it, go there. On the right side, he also has all the major organizations information as well. If you scroll on down there, Stephanie, you'll see information on Mass and PE. I know that's really something critical to all of us. Keep going. All kinds of research on walking and running in single file lines that is really interesting information. The social emotional learning information, we have a whole page on that that's separate from this. This equity, diversity, and inclusion checklist is amazing, put together by an amazing group of people. Please take a look at that. It's just outstanding. The resources there are amazing. This is just such good work. Scroll on down and then you'll see a whole elementary section. And then we're getting ready to get our secondary section up. It's resources are being worked on right now. And then advocacy. We all know how big advocacy is. And I think Kristen and or Erica, I forget who is talking about that later, but we have a lot of advocacy resources there, and then some video tutorials. So you can click on any of those tutorials and you'll be able to see, to learn about whatever that topic is. And a lot of those tech topics that we mentioned earlier, you can find video tutorials right here for those. Now, if you'll go on over to the projector page, Stephanie.
We may mention this slide, a couple slides earlier, the templates as well.
Yeah, so if you, on this page, both the projector page and the templates page, we don't really have to look at both because I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to explain that we've added some search options that we didn't used to have. And sometimes people would have a criticism, which was fair, that it was difficult to find resources because there are so many. So what we did, if you'll click on applicable for, what you can do is click that and you can choose which situation you're in. So if you're in hybrid, if you're in HPE in the classroom, remote, social distancing in the gym or outside, you can click and you can see those resources. So if you click on any one of those, and then if you click on level, you can also delineate it by whichever area, whichever grade level you are. So if you choose middle school, you're going to see all the resources for middle school that are PE in the classroom. And then if you scroll, you'll see all the resources that are available there. We also have notes on them. So oftentimes there's some additional information or something to kind of help you understand how you might use it. We've tried to explain that there for you as well. The templates page basically has the exact same thing. There's actually templates, there's hyperdocs, there's lessons, there's printables over there. So that is a fourth page that you guys can go to. And I think our time is up, so I don't want to take up anybody else's time. But there's a lot of stuff there. I don't expect that any one thing might be something that you're going to use exactly as it is, but that's the cool thing, guys. Take it, edit it however you need to make it work for you. And it still should save you some time because you didn't have to start entirely from scratch. So that's pretty much our portion.
Thanks. Okay.
All right. Honestly, if you haven't bookmarked this website, you should definitely go ahead and do so.
I yield my time. I yield my time back. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, just great. So I'm going to try to follow that of all of those amazing resources. So thank you again, Mark and Becky, for all you're doing to help us with all of that. So for many of you that shifted to remote learning very abruptly this past spring, I was giving an analogy earlier to Mark and Becky that we were all building the ship as we were trying to sail it. And we were trying to come up with resources and create documents. And I know that this has been said many times, and I will continue to say it, that the the Twitter, physical education and health community, and everyone out there sharing resources was incredible. So a lot of the ideas that, you know, you're going to see come through collaborating with others and talking out ideas with other people, and how can I make them work for my students and my population of kids that I'm going to be seeing still in an unknown model. So I reflected a lot about my remote learning experience, and then got thinking about the hybrid model, and then got thinking about in-person with social distancing. And I thought, regardless of whichever model that I'm in, these are my must-dos. And like many of you all, when we start classes in whatever version that may look like, we're going to have new students, and establishing those connections with students that you have never, ever taught before are going to be really important and critical. So my first one, and these are not in any particular order, but by far, establishing connections and building that classroom community through a variety of initiatives and activities is really important to create a classroom that the students feel valued, they feel trusted, they feel respected, and that's just really important to me. So hopefully you'll also set up, in no matter what type of environment that you are teaching in, some type of community building and connections with your students. Some of them, I know I'm speaking to all of you that would do for New York State, we have new learning standards, but following along the Shape America learning standards and the guidance that they've put out for the reentry has been extremely helpful with grade level outcomes to focus on and to look at. I know that there is a group of us that are looking at the high school grade level outcomes and adapting them, and that document will be coming out to be shared at some time soon. One thing that I did in my remote learning experience was the ongoing check-ins with my students. I am a Google one-to-one school, so I was very fortunate that I had students that did have Chromebooks, so they had accessibility, but it didn't mean that they were always checking in. It didn't mean that they were always engaged. So I did weekly check-ins with our students, and then that turned into the district using physical education as a main source for SEL check-ins for our students, in which our guidance and social work department used our information to then reach out to students who really needed it. So I would highly recommend also looking into regular check-ins and sharing that with any of your district leaders. I think no matter what model you're in, looking at make sure that there are guidelines and balance. That's really important. Talking with supervisors, either other subject matters, and seeing what the workload is, and making sure that that balance is there also with whatever curriculum you're going to be teaching for your students. One other one that I want to focus on is, as I mentioned, I teach unified physical education, which is a blended learning experience for students of varying ability levels. And the modifications are really important in any classroom, but I also have a lot of students that have a lot of different types of needs, and knowing the trail to go in, because it did start to shift when we went to the remote learning in terms of who we would reach out to. Actually, one of our first steps was an administrator. In the past, it would be a counselor, a social worker, or something along those lines, but they wanted that changed a little bit. So just be mindful of that. And then I put down in big bold, because I think, as Mark and Becky mentioned, I think we are going to see a version of every model at some point, and to be flexible, to be understanding, and most importantly, be reflective, because we need to do the best for our students. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Stephanie, that would be great. For some just quick ideas for online learning, this can be used for secondary PE. But the one thing that I didn't do, reflecting back, is something that I'm going to 100% do moving forward, is a needs assessment survey to all of my students. I got to a big feeling through a lot of conversations with them about, I live in an apartment, so I'm not able to do louder physical activity. I'm not allowed outside because I don't live in a neighborhood, and my parents won't let me go out there. Other obstacles where I'm caring for younger siblings, or I now have to get a job because a family member lost a job. So I'm really going to do a much thorough job on the needs assessment. What are their resources available to them? physical activity that they enjoy, things that that they would really like to take charge of and be really in charge of their fitness levels, I think is really critical. We definitely did a goal setting, fitness, and then reflection, which was all built around SHAPE and New York State learning standards. I would like to dive deeper into that even more with the goal setting, making it maybe a little bit shorter term and seeing some different types of results. Exploring different fitness apps with the population students I work with. Just to give you all a little bit of a background, over 50% of our students at the high school I teach in are involved in athletics. So we have a very, very high active level of students. So they're always asking questions about what's the new fitness app and what can I use and how can I get better? Because I'm not just using this in phys ed, I'm also using it for athletics. And I'm happy that they recognize that, so we can be partners together and explore different things for them. The other thing I'm looking at doing with crossing over with health is I'm going to be working with my health teachers to talk about different topics in terms of stress and nutrition, problem solving, things that we always do, but in an online learning environment, diving into them more and working with them and finding ways to have these really good class discussions. Because if it's happening in health and if it's happening in phys ed, maybe that can then go over to the math teacher and that can go over to your science and your social studies. And we can now all be caring for every student in every subject. And we can be the people that really lead that charge. And then another piece that I think is really important is exploring a variety of activities. They might not be able to physically be able to do archery. They might not have access to that type of equipment, but why not learn about it? Why not expose them to different activities, teach them the content, the knowledge that they would need to know about doing those activities even in the future. And then also having students share in some activities that they would like to learn more about and sharing that out with their peers in some type of project-based learning. If you go to the next slide, please. For the in-person with social distancing, this one makes me a little nervous because I think currently in New York, we have been given this 12-foot distance, and that seems like a really big challenge. It's guided for music and phys ed that is aerobically inducing. And I've asked the question, but I haven't gotten the answer yet about aerobic activity. What about the activities that aren't aerobically inducing? Can we now go to a 6-foot distance? So there's still some questions out there, but I'm not sure of people's guidelines in terms of whether they're allowed to use equipment or not. My advice would be to, if you are allowed to use some type of equipment, making sure that you have clear expectations in place and make sure that your students know them, make sure you're teaching them about how to do that, because that is really, really critical. We are going to be in New York outside as much as possible, and we're beginning asking our field and maintenance crew to mark areas for social distancing, especially at the younger elementary levels, so that they are becoming more familiar and practiced with that. But it's equally as important at the high school levels because they want to be just as social. So we have to really make sure that we're partners with our students and our maintenance and custodial and grounds crew to help create that. I'm not sure about the if my school is going to be moving to this, but there are some thoughts about the split instruction. We might have a model in place where I am lecturing with a group of students about some content in a smaller class number, and then I rotate to an outside group and I'm doing physical activity with them. That might be an option for you in a split instruction environment. We have 84-minute blocks. So we're just being mindful of how we can reduce our numbers without sacrificing time, because we don't want to lose that time with them. So we're looking at different options to maybe split time with other PE teachers in terms of lecture. And then some activities that we have already been approved to start exploring and looking at is the fitness walking. I am in a community where we do have access to some trails and some neighborhoods where we'd be able to do that. Some yoga, some rhythms and dance, fitness, orienteering. And then there is a really wonderful book called No Props Activities. The link I provided, I don't recommend you purchasing that book because they're asking $100 for that book, where it is not that price, but I just wanted you in the links page to have the author for that, and then just exploring some different social distancing creative games. Next slide, please. And then you're going to see some crossover between the hybrid and the in-person with social distancing. So I have to thank, I have a 4th grader, my daughter is going into 5th grade, and her teacher did what was called a Genius Hour project, where theirs was more about exploring something that they have never done before. And an hour every single day, they would work on a project. So my daughter and I shared a space during all of this remote learning. And I have to thank her 4th grade teacher, because then I really got interested in this Genius Hour. And I thought, geez, how could I turn this into a physical education based style instruction for my students? So I was really thinking not just for this presentation, but for the fall, I would love for my students to be able to an activity that they have never, ever done before, but regardless of resources and money, like thinking big, just really go for it. What's an activity that you would love to try? And then finding out, where can I do that activity, the cost of that activity, and all of those layers in between, and it becoming their own personal Genius Hour. I went through and I ran it through some of the SHAPE and New York State learning outcomes, and you can actually make this project hit every single one. So for the standards. So that was something I was really interested in. Mark and Becky mentioned before about the flipped classroom and a hybrid learning. Not only to reinforce content, but to also to keep students ambassadors for their own learning. So rolling out information, then having them bring it back in. Idea would still be having them do the goal setting, be active and reflection, just like you saw in the remote model, and then continuing with these activities for when I do get to see them in person, and then focusing on more outside with these activities in that flipped model or in some project-based learning assignments. So thank you so much. I appreciate everyone. I'm going to kick it over to the next panelist.
Awesome.
All right, so I was going to focus on accessibility and just kind of how we're going to adjust to all of this. And just to kind of piggyback a lot on what Allison said, we didn't want to be redundant because I think we all really agreed her information and Mark and Becky's information was just awesome. But, you know, I think this is a learning process, and we have to be patient with ourselves and know that we don't know all the answers going in, and it's okay. And I think we have to be okay with that as teachers. And I know that our district is still kind of figuring out how that's going to look, even though we're about a month away. And so I know there's a lot of us that are in limbo of like, what are you going to do? How's it going to look? And it's okay that we don't know, and we're going to figure it out. But our students, we have to remember that our students, especially our high risk students, are probably feeling that even more so than we're feeling it. And our trauma induced students and all of that, like that sense of comfort, we're not even really going to be able to give what they are typically used to when we go back to school. I mean, think about it, like we're not going to be able to circulate around our classes like we used to circulate around our classes. We're not going to be able to have that one-on-one connection when they walk into a room that's typical. We're not going to be able to high five. We're not going to be able to hug. So we've got to be really just cognizant of that experience for our students and do the best we can to make connections. So even if we are in person, I know I'm going to be using a lot of those check-ins through Google Classrooms or whatever the sources that you use, because I know I'm not going to be able to get to the students the way I would typically get to them in my normal setting of classroom, but I still want to know what's happening as much as I can. And so just creating that flexibility in your curriculum, creating that flexibility in your teaching skills. One of our purchases is going to be a speaker with a microphone on it, so that when we're outside, we can actually be heard. And then, you know, student phones are going to be a big thing for us because our Chromebooks don't work outside because they don't have Wi-Fi when we're outside. But I know that having options for students to be using their phones with my Google slide on it or whatever we're teaching from that day, if they're too far away, would be really important for students to be able to access. And then I kind of went through some of the other stuff, just making things. I know in our district, we have over 70 languages that are spoken. So just working with all of our ELL and second language people to kind of figure out how that stuff looks for them. Is my curriculum available? Like I know Google Forms and Google Classrooms and Google Slides, you can do a lot of that translation. But if you're using another format, you'd want to, you know, use as many people as you can to figure out how to get those things into those other languages if you're online or in those settings. Another one that I did in the spring, and it seemed to work really well, is just giving students as much choice and ideas. I learned a lot about students in the spring and how much they actually don't know how to just go out and be fit, or in their home and be fit. We're set up as a movement class for most of our classes. So it's really, they come in, we tell them what to do, and they do it. And we teach it along the way, but we were a trimester, so we were only 9 days into our trimester when we were cut off, and we weren't able to see students anymore. And then we had about a month break. So it was like they really had no idea what physical activity was, as opposed to what physical education was. So it really was us learning how to communicate through those processes. The visual aids, we had a big movement in the spring. I guess it wasn't really this kind of fall or the winter into the spring, just on cultural resources and reaching our minority students. So we tried to add in our spaces, which if you're online, the spaces will be the resources that you're giving them, but trying to include as many ethnicities as we could and body types, showing them that it's okay for everybody to be working out and for everybody to be doing movements in different ways. And it really seemed to help our students when we started adding that in, just feel more included. And some of it I used students who allowed me to, and some of it I found GIFs online when I could, which that's a Mark and Becky thing. If you look at theirs, there's a ton of that kind of stuff on there for you. I think the other thing that I kind of wanted to highlight when it comes to the accessibility is that, I use Google Forms, Google Slides. We have a Canvas thing. We're going to do check-ins. We're going to do journals. We're going to do ways for them to show understanding. And in the spring, it really forced us, like I said, we were a movement class that had to turn into a curriculum-based class. And so we're going to kind of try to incorporate both concepts when we come into the fall, now that we are hopefully in person, some online, whatever we are going to be. But we want to make sure we're focusing on mastery, so that no matter what setting students are in, no matter how many resources and support they have, you can't really see them do the work always, but we want them to show us that they understand how to do the stuff. We want them to, whether it's through project type activities, which will probably be a big way that we will do it, just we have so many different types of students and so many different types of settings. But we really are going to focus on that mastery, rather than are they doing the workout I wrote, or do they at least understand how that workout that I wrote or that activity that I gave them fits into their world as far as fitness goes. So yeah, that's kind of just a focus really on the assessment, and do some things on advocacy. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. I'm going to pass over the torch to Miss Kristen.
Caught it. Thank you. Stick. Whether you are online, you're hybrid, or you're in person, we have to be an advocate. Allison was talking about some of the painting of the lines. So if you can't paint the lines or have areas, these bubbles, obviously they'd have to be one per kid. Can't really clean them out in between. So it could just be part of the required uniform. Tell the clothing companies, they'll get right on it, I'm sure. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give you as many awesome resources as Becky and Mark did. Phenomenal. I mean, my hat is literally off to you. But I don't want to add to our plates, because I mean, Allison netted out everything that we need to have in whatever model we're going to go to. And then Erica reminded us about all the other things that we need. But just to add to your plate, because we are those walking billboards going through our communities. And I've often said that, and I say this way too much, is that if you're not at the table, then you are on the table. And so you really have to get involved, because they're having those discussions at the district offices, at the county offices, and for some reason, the easiest thing to cut, I don't know why, in a health pandemic is, of course, us. So you really need to get involved. So these 3 E's are what we used with our students. And then I just saw it spilling over into advocacy. And then also, it's also something that EPEW has just done a phenomenal job creating here. I mean, I was engaged from the get-go, whether I was clapping my hands or doing my star jacks to tell you what I liked, and choosing that in the opening session. It was just amazing. And then you're going to get educated with tons of resources here. And that is, I can already feel the empowerment going on, where everybody is just feeling so pumped up and just ready to go now. And that is exactly how you leave. Because what's the family come to learn? Leave as a family, and the family just continues to grow and get bigger. And that's just awesome. On the elementary panel, the other day, Daniel Hill from Kentucky shared the SHAPE advocacy letter. So please see that resource. He personalized it, and he got positive feedback from his board members. And you really got to be that the penguin. And if I'll talk more about the penguins later if you didn't hear the call earlier, but you have to be that brave penguin. They all kind of gather at the cliff, and one of them has to be willing to jump in, because that is where their food is, but it's also where their predator is. So they all kind of look down there, and as soon as one goes in, then everybody else is just like, let's go, it's safe. So same thing, you have to be that person who's going to be willing to show everybody that it is safe. And the more they can hear from you, the better. So again, with the engagement, it's just like in your class, you've set that hook, the anticipatory set. We need it with our stakeholders, with the people that are making the decisions for us. You've got to get involved with that. And the power, like here, we're given like a few minutes, and it's like, I found the power of 3 minutes. That's all we get in our board meeting. Sometimes if there's a lot of blue cards, they will cut it down to 1 minute. And even in those times, because I've gone down there, and they can put a face to a name, and they hopefully feel and see the passion that you have for what you're doing every day. So you have to ask yourself, how am I going to engage adults? Might be a little different, but bring the class to them. If they can't come to the class, bring pictures, email them things as well, show them what you're doing. Let them know, because a lot of times they don't. A lot of times they don't know, or you don't want to do that assuming thing. And then the education is, we have to value what we teach. We have to, educate for that mind and body connection. Even if just like we have to camouflage fitness for our students, we have to camouflage that we're educating them because they think they already know all. So, but that definitely is where you show them the why and what you're doing. The empowerment that comes as a result of the engagement and the education. You just won't get there automatically. You've got to put in the work. You've got to grease the wheels. Squeaky wheel, gets something. I haven't gotten it yet, but hopefully I will. But recently in our last board meeting, a trustee actually brought up physical education, not one that I thought would, but actually brought it up, and I didn't have to. And so I was like, oh my gosh, maybe we've gotten through, but it takes those steps. It takes those steps in order to get there. Just like we want our students to have these skills and make good choices for their wellness, we have to also continue to think about the stakeholders, and we have to make sure that they have these skills too, to have that lifelong fitness process. So Stephanie, go ahead and hit the other one. I'm not sure. I can't remember. Oh yeah, it's the penguin. That's what it is. Of course, it's my penguin. I had to. Again, kudos for EPW. Definitely, Scott, you made everybody step up to the plate, including your committee members. Just phenomenal job. But for those of you that don't know, I have a little penguin problem, but I've had it ever since I was a little girl. So as you can tell there, that's when it started, and it just hasn't stopped. And then years ago, it was like, oh my gosh, it's, you know, my penguin. And then wait a minute, it stands for physical education needs great, unique individuals now. And it just came to me. And so eventually, if I get on, you know, like Artie and JD and everybody else, maybe I'll write that book. But my students, if they can associate that penguin with what we do, and no matter where in life when they see one, I always apologize to the parents of back to school night. Sorry for scarring your kids with the penguin, but it just happens. And but we have a lot of things in common. We're fighting for our survival. We hang out in large groups in the rookeries, also like our classes, and we're just bipeds that want to fly as well. So thank you so much to the EPEW for just making this just a phenomenal experience under these really tough times. I just thank you so much. My other dancing ones fell off. Are they there? No, they fell off.
You had another pair of penguins?
Oh, I had another one dancing down there, but I guess it fell off. Sometimes they just run off, you know, they're like middle schoolers.
Oh, there they
There
are. Awesome.
Thanks,
Okay,
Stephanie. I'll throw it back to
everyone.
you.
Cut it. Gotta go run with it now. Cut the torch. So this concludes our share time for our secondary panel. We have our resource slide right here. These are all clickable links. As soon as you go ahead and grab that that bit.ly link, whether it's on our website, or I'll also put it up here at the very end in just a couple of minutes here. But I can't begin to thank each and every one of you on the panels, and those of you on the chat, those of you that are going to watch this in the future, for stopping by and improving your practice and trying to be better. It's been incredible to see the amount of willingness to share all of the things that we've come up with just in, you know, a couple of months, really, a few months. We were in a state of emergency learning when we first got the call. For me, it was March 13th. We're closing down, and all of a sudden we had a week to build a game plan, and oh, here we go. Let's strap on our seatbelts and take off on this wild ride. So it's been really an honor to be a part of the phys ed community, and Becky and Mark with their website with incredible resources. It's true, at the drop of a dime, if you ask them for help, they will do anything they can in their power to help you out, whether it's a video or a Zoom call. I know Becky has been here for our committee, even if it was just for a graphic that we were having problems with. They are there for you. Allison, thank you for really honing in on building those relationships. That needs assessment survey, that's huge. And I definitely want to pick your brain about that too, as well as I'm sure many other educators. And again, building the relationships with the Genius Hour, something that they're going to own, project-based learning. And your New York document, I don't know if any of you have seen this on social media, but it is incredible. Wherever you find yourself in the United States, the world, you should take a look at this document because it's amazing, and it's linked right on here on this resource page. Erica, thank you for your talk about accessibility and your equity of access. We're all facing different types of scenarios where some of our kids don't have access to technology. You find, you know, districts loaning their technology, loaning hotspots. Some of them weren't fortunate enough to do so, so they went paper pencil. We're all in different scenarios, and we have to be, again, flexible, as she said. We're gonna see lots of baggage with our students. We had lots of social justice issues this summer, which we are gonna see, I think, is gonna pop up. So that EDI is gonna be key, and that checklist or that list document that's on Becky's website, it's amazing. I had the honor of working behind the scenes on that, and it's truly quite a document. I can't wait to print that thing out and have it with me as I teach when we go back in person at some point in time. And students being seen in our classes, no matter what shape, size, where they come from, what religions they practice, whatever. They need to be seen in our curriculum and in our phys ed classes, whether it's through visuals, through activities we provide, through just giving them a voice, and letting them know that they're heard and they have a spot in our class. And again, Kristen, thank you so much for your backyard advocacy. We do not need to be in Capitol Hill to advocate for phys ed. We can do it straight from our campuses, from our offices, wherever we are. We can do it, and we can do it for ourselves if we don't have the support. But you definitely have the support from the phys ed community, no doubt about that. You rally the troops and we're there. So again, thank you to every single one of you for being here. I'm gonna exit out of this so that I can show the bit.ly link one last time. And before that, actually, I forgot about this. Our last social is today at 3 p.m. Oops, I clicked the wrong one. Let me hit present here. So come join us. It's game night. We usually have a game night at EPEW up in San Luis Obispo. So connect with us on social media by using the hashtag EPEW2020, EPEW family. Watch any of our sessions on YouTube. They are rewatchable. They're going to be on there for life, I think. And again, our last social is going to be today in a few hours. So again, I'm going to get out of this screen so I can put the bit.ly link as I promised. Once it does that, I'll leave it up for a few seconds so that you can snap a pic or quickly jot it down on a post-it or a note. And thanks so much for joining us, everybody, and we appreciate you. Big, huge round of applause for everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for
everyone.
these efforts.
Thank you, team.
Thank you, Stephanie. Great job, EPW. You're awesome.
Guys.